I have a kind of a very different perspective because Judy Brewster is not in a horror movie. She's in real life. And all this stuff that's happening around, she's completely oblivious of. And when she's funny, she's not trying to be funny. She's just telling you what's happening. I mean, really, the microwave doesn't melt the marshmallows right.
And Chris, you are probably one of the coolest vampires out there. I'm sure you're aware of how cool you actually are.
I have no idea.
And by the way, the soundtrack also for that movie kicked ass.
It's a great soundtrack. And yes, and to backtrack a little bit on what you're saying, a lot of what you saw in terms of the coolness of the character, Tom brought that out. He encouraged me constantly to go farther and to explore that sort of side of the character, the coolness, just how attractive this kind of character can be.
Hands up everywhere. I guess we'll start here and then work our way across.
Hi guys, did you guys have any behind the scenes rumors that we don't know about that you like to share?
I bragged that I could drive a moped when I rode up to Charlie's house with Evil on the back, and I wrecked it right away. I don't think they were rolling. It was just a practice run, but there you have that.
The one I remember was, because I had never seen anyone say, I want to print that for my reel, was there's a point at the end when we're in the basement, and Jerry he leaps over I don't know if you remember this, he leaps over the coffin to sort of get in my way or Roddy's way or something. But the leap was only kind of a half a leap on one take, and you straddled the coffin and landed like a Bronco bull thing. He said, "I'd like to that for my real place." And I thought, it was just so, because he had all the makeup on, it was so out of.
I still have that limp.
I think that a lot of people always ask me what was the melting thing like, and I've told this before, but stop me if you've heard this. I had to go to a special effects house after the show was over. We had shot all the stuff, and I was sitting there. I had to sit there for 3 hours. They put tubes through my hair with green goop and Caro syrup, which was red, and it was sticky. And it's standing there for 3 hours, and it's sticking to me. And I'm like, after you're done, I was like, okay, great, we're done. Now just point me to the shower there. Oh man, the shower isn't working. Our plumbing went bad. I'm like, I have to drive home like this? So I get on the 10 freeway, and I'm driving, and I'm like looking at my gas gauge. I'm like, oh my God, I've got to get gas. I won't make it home. So I go to get gas, and I said, the guy comes out. I'm not going to pump it myself. So the guy comes out, and he literally goes, how much? And I go, just fill it up. And he didn't say anything. He filled it up. And then as I was leaving, I see him on the phone. And I'm thinking he's probably calling the cops.
There were, yes, a lot of hands going up. I guess we'll start going. Carrie?
My question, I never ask stuff about the work because that's just me. I'm always trying to evolve as a person and learn life skills. So I'm curious what are your favorite interests, like to just decompress and, escape from all.
What are our favorite
Things to decompress.
decompression mechanisms for each of us? Okay.
He's a master gardener, so he gardens all the time. Always showing off his vegetables and his tubers.
I walk. I have a puppy. I'm a dog mom. And so that's what, and I listen to podcasts, music, and books in my ears.
I watch Chris Sarandon movies.
I haven't done it this long, but my oldest son is a reenactor. He does Revolutionary War reenactments. And so we've started doing these encampments where you go as a regiment, as a Revolutionary War regiment, and do these campouts. And these are hardcore people, which I'm sure a lot of you can relate to, and they live in an 18th century world for about 72 hours. And everything is completely authentic, from what you cook on to what you sleep on to what it's amazing. He's 17, but
So you live vicariously?
So well, no, but after the third or fourth time, I realized that I exited the modern world for a weekend. And all you've got is a fire to cook with. All you've got for entertainment is people to talk to and their stories. And it just became, they can't use your phone. That's your FARB. That's what they call FARB in the business. And so I've started doing that and really looking forward to it. And I was doing it just to kind of chaperone him through this stuff, but just connecting is.
What's your rank?
I'm a civilian reenactor. I'm a celebrity. I can't be a officer or anything. No,
Watch out, we're not supposed to be promoting new work because of the union.
No, seriously, we can't. But
it's not a film.
I'm kidding. Just kidding. Chocolate.
I thought you said toked it, and I was like, oh, really? Okay.
And then
You
Steven.
have a question. You've been having a question.
Yes, she has. Yes.
Well, first off, before I ask the question,
Judy.
I want to say thank you for remembering. Oh my God. Wow, you're good. First of all, can I have a new group picture where I look skinny? Okay. I was wondering if each of you could share a memory of Roddy, since he's so missed here.
There you go. I knew, I met Roddy doing the movie, but my wife, Joanna, had known Roddy previously because she was on a tour with Roddy many years before we were making Fright Night and before I met my wife. Roddy was very ill, and one of the things he did was he decided that people that he knew well, he would invite them over and to chat as he was dealing with his illness, and he was terminally ill. So Joanne and I went to visit him, and we arrived, and Roddy was sitting in a lounge chair, wonderful lounge chair. He had on a cream-colored alpaca turtleneck sweater. He looked incredibly elegant. He had a glass of wine and an IV on the other arm. And we sat and talked for maybe an hour and a half, and then his assistant came in and said, I think Roddy's getting tired, and we left. And okay.
I think that a while back, there's always been this rumor that there was behind-the-scenes stuff that Roddy shot, and he had one of those big things. This was 1984. He had one of those big cameras with the side, and I tracked down the guy named Dennis who took care of him in his final years, and I said to Dennis, I said, do you know if there's any of that tapes? He said, I got all these tapes out in the garage. Oh. And I said, well, do you think you can go through them? He said, yeah, I'll start to go. So maybe a couple months later, he said, I went through it, I found the tape, and I digitized it. And he posted it just for us, because Dennis may want to, I think he's doing some kind of autobiography on Roddy, but they sent it just to us so we could see it. It was really great. Yes. But, being Roddy, he had one that the lens cap was on for a minute. But it was really cool to see, because I think the stuff that when we all got together with the cast, we were taking that cast picture, and there was, well, first of all, we were all so young, but it was really cool to see some of that stuff, and I'm so glad.
And the faces of the crew that you immediately identify.
Yeah.
But yet I had not thought about in almost 40 years. But it was like Mission Impossible, that tape, because it was like, you have 18 minutes to watch this. And then it's going to...
Yeah, it's going to disintegrate.
But it was fantastic, because you were transported.
Yeah.
And also on the set, he was such a repository of stories about Hollywood history. You know, he started when he was 5, 6, 7 years old. You know, one of my favorite movies to this day is How Green Was My Valley, that Roddy was one of the stars of. And he was just a boy, and his stories were extraordinary, and he was very generous about sharing them. He wasn't, and they weren't done in a self-aggrandizing way. He didn't, it wasn't about glorifying himself, because he knew everybody, literally everybody. I mean, the bathroom in his home had pictures of, you can't imagine the people of Hollywood history that Roddy was friends with. And he would have dinners with these famous people, have people over and, you know, mix people together that didn't know each other. He was an extraordinary man.
Yeah, that's great. He would tell these great stories between scenes and stuff, and there was, you know, he would give as much detail as he could. But I said to him one time, I said, you have to write this stuff down. This is amazing. This is like a history. And he said, no, I will never write a book. I will never tell these stories to anyone. I will never share them, you know, to the general public and stuff. So, yes, he did take great photographs.
He's a great photographer as well, famous for it, in fact.
Also, Roddy, this guy Dennis told me that Roddy also he would tape every single person he ever talked with on the phone without their permission. And he said that he told Stephen Sondheim that Sondheim hit the roof, you know. But apparently in some states that you can't do that, but in some states it's okay to do that. But I would love to hear those tapes, but
But he really was a Hollywood archive. I mean, he knew everyone.
Oh, yeah.
And what did you used to say? He knows where all the bodies were buried. But it was marvelous to stand. You have to stand on your mark while they adjust lights, and sometimes it's tedious. And he would just start stories because we were in an historic studio, and it was originally built by Selznick, right?
David Selznick.
Yeah. And yeah, he's the story of Charlie Chaplin.
Did you watch the video that the footage that John shared?
Yeah, I did.
So he has this video camera, and it's massive, right? It's like a suitcase in the camera part of it, the recording thing. And we're going through the studio, we're going through the lot, and he's going by the buildings, and he knows what was shot there when it was shot and all that stuff. Yeah, it was really amazing.
You'll have to excuse us if we talk with each other.
So anyway,
we don't see each other very long. You know, as a matter of fact, Roddy,
it's amazing.
It was my first acting job on Fright Night. Well, I had done a little TV, but what really impressed me was how great and accepting he was of this guy who he didn't know and was a new actor, and Chris too. I mean, I was a fanboy of Chris's from Dog Day Afternoon, so I was nervous as hell, and with Roddy too. But they were just like, it was just like we were instant family. I mean, it was amazing.
Well, he was very humble and really modest about it. Mm-hmm. But it's true. We were treated, because we were all young newbie actors, the kids in the movie, and accomplished incredible careers before we met them. And we were treated as peers.
Yeah, for sure.
And, you know, it's pretty amazing.
Do you have a memory with Roddy, Stephen?
Yeah, I was, I mean, I agree with what everyone else has said, but yeah, I was really petrified to meet him for the first time. I mean, I was like, what am I going to say? But he, he just totally put me at ease. He had this wonderful, warm, welcoming smile, and he was just so open and just a really sweet guy. Very, very sweet.
Question in the back there.
Okay, so first of all, I came in from Hot Springs, Arkansas for this.
Wow.
Okay, all right, 48-hour train ride. I spent 21 years managing movie sets. Okay, and I remember showing this at the drive-in when it came out. Nobody knew what this film was. Nobody had any expectation of what this film was. So what I want to do is I want to go back just a little bit and talk about the influences from the point of Dark Shadows into Full Chapter Night Stalker, into Salem's Lot, into a wonderful film with Richard Williams called Vampire, okay, and how that affected you. Because there are send-offs in your film of all of these. How influenced was Tom by this, okay? How influenced were you? You know, of course, Chris, with you playing the vampire, you know, you're in a class where I said this. It was old school, ended at Fright Night. New school started at law schools. Okay? There's a whole different generation of vampires. How did that affect you guys? What was your influences off of that?
Well, for me, it was the script.
Absolutely.
And this really is a question for Tom, don't you think? I mean,
He's in Minneapolis.
I know, and he's disappointed, and he said he wished he could be here with all of us. But in terms of, it's really his baby, and it's on the page, and to be handed that with, he had such respect for the genre, for the lore. And so that's what I came to.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that's important to also take note of is that that Tom always felt that the vampire genre had come into a kind of ill repute, and that what was happening was that it was being parodied with Love at First Bite and a couple movie or
79.
yeah, and so that often is the death knell for people taking a particular genre seriously. So I don't think, I think that he went into it thinking, I have to be not slavishly adherent to all of these previous renderings of the genre, on the one hand, but I can't pretend that we can't move forward. We have to move forward. And one of the ways of doing that is to have fun with the genre, but not make fun of it. And so he injected moments of having fun and also referring back to previous ones, but in a very affectionate way. And he managed to straddle that. It's a very fine line. Very fine line. I mean, I was lucky enough to be in a movie, The Princess Bride, that does essentially the same thing. You know, where you're not making fun of the genres, the previous genres of adventure and romance and whatever, but at the same time, you're having fun with them. And at the same time, you're still playing very high stakes. And that's the difference, I think, between the movies that came immediately prior to Fright Night and going forward to the movies you mentioned. That's my opinion.
I have a kind of a very different perspective because Judy Brewster is not in a horror movie. She's in real life. And all this stuff that's happening around, she's completely oblivious of. And when she's funny, she's not trying to be funny. She's just telling you what's happening. I mean, really, the microwave doesn't melt the marshmallows right.
And I said that this is Dorothy's first convention, right? Love. But as we've been doing these over the years, and we watch the movie again and again, sort of, as part of the cons and stuff, her performance in that is absolutely, in a way, it's more troubling and scary than some of the stuff this guy does, because I said this, you facilitate the whole thing, inviting him in the house, and and your obliviousness and cheerfulness and friendliness and excitement about the new neighbor and all that stuff is just, it kind of digs the hole deeper and deeper for Charley and for what happens in the movie. So I think it's absolutely brilliant. We're so happy you're here.
And I'm giving Tom credit for that because it really goes to your point of taking the genre seriously by not making me let you in on the joke. I was dead serious. You know how hard it is to meet a guy when you've got a kid?
Just as Tom always says this, his main influence for the whole film was The Boy Who Cried Wolf. That was it.
We have other questions? Yeah.
I'm curious if you can speak at all to the kind of status this has gotten, especially with queer horror fans, if that was something you were aware of, or if you were like pleasantly surprised by that.
What kind of horror fans?
Like LGBT and queer horror fans.
Have you seen the Queer for Fear? I didn't make the cut. I came in at the last minute, but I think the scene, and Chris and Stephen can speak to this more so than I can. It was evident that they were speaking to being other in society, even though that wasn't the vernacular in the mid-'80s. But this beautiful language, and that relationship, it showed the fluidity of sexuality with his character. And I think, obviously, that's in the script. It's purposeful. But again, Tom didn't belabor it. He didn't point at it. It was just part of who this creature was, right? And I've gotten approached a lot about now that aspect. And, you know, there are 3 queer people who were in the cast. I'm not outing him.
That's true. And the cat's out of the bag.
But I also think that's part of Roddy. Shut it, Roddy. But I think that's also part of why that conversation is happening more, because we're out. Yeah.
And I think also that horror is an outlet for a lot of people who feel to be other, who feel not just the LGBT community, but also a lot of young people who feel that they are but who are ostracized because they're geeks, because they're this or that. You know, that they don't conform to the kind of norms in particularly high school, right? I mean, it's mostly high school that carries on through life, and I'm proud that we're that the movie was an expression of that.
I don't think Chris and Tom made us do a lot of writing out of history and all this, which was very helpful to me. But I don't think we ever discussed that part. It just never came up. And there's a scene when I'm bandaging his hand in the window, and I was standing doing it, and he goes, "Get on your knees." And I go, "Okay." And then I watch the movie and go, "Wait a second." But honestly, it doesn't matter. That part and whatever I was, don't ask, I don't know. But whatever I was and that, it's like you get to write that part because it's not defined, and you can make up whatever you want in it.
Yeah.
Which is what great art does.
But it did make it more intimate.
As we were talking over each other.
Oh, sorry. We do that.
No, we do that, and I'm actually talking about you. We were talking today about what we need as humans. And she was talking about the sense of belonging, the sense of being a part of, and the longing to belong. You know, it's not just an accident that those words are the same. Everybody has it, and to a certain extent, I think every human being feels not like terminally unique, like I am the only weird one like this. So to find your tribe, whatever it looks like, whatever it is, where for me, I could say, I'm not weird, I'm just like them, and that's the belonging. And that is whether it is whatever the letter is that goes with, for me, who knows what it is? We've been discussing this a lot. But that's part of what makes this movie amazing in these conventions.
Yeah, it's the convention universe.
Yeah.
And it's marvelous. It's really...
Question right here.
I guess I just want to bounce off that point and talk about the way people interpret this movie as part of its success and why it stayed growing. And I think what's great about it is that it doesn't have a lot of answers to these things. It kind of just proposes a lot. And I wanted to ask, you hear people's interpreted. I heard the Queer for Fear, the way people interpret different relationships. But I guess my question is, as actors, when you read the script and you're trying to get in character, what are your interpretations like when you were making the film? Like certain relationships, like Chris and Billy Coles, for example.
I can tell you for sure, mine was a guy named Roger Korshoniak who bullied me in middle school. I just did that.
What? Tell us about him.
Roger used to make me pay him a dime every day so he wouldn't beat me up. But look I won, right?
I think my approach was just, it could have been a serial killer. It could have been, it could have been a horrible bully. It was my perspective was just real life. What would happen if this thing that nobody would believe you was happened to you? And that's sort of what fueled me for the film. So, no.
And also, we were given the opportunity to explore moments that humanized all the characters. And I felt that the challenge for me was to at least project, at least at some point, that Jerry had been a human. At some point. I mean, particularly there was the scene with Charley where he offers Charley the option of, if you just shut up, I'll leave you alone. And then he says, the basic answer is forget about it. And Jerry just goes, he says the one word, fool. But there's everything in that word about, I wish that I had those choices. Why am I having to do this again over the centuries? I have to do this all the time. I'm the most paranoid creature on the face of the earth because I have to sleep during the day. And I mean, it's, all of that can be encapsulated in a moment. And we were all given moments like that in the movie, which doesn't always happen when you're working in film.
This is why the movie is beyond just a monster movie, because you all did that.
It's on the page. Honest to God, it is, and it's a cliche because it's true. And if it's on the page, then you really have a shot of bringing it to life. And no matter how many bells and whistles you bring to a project that's not well written, it ain't gonna happen. And that is all Tom Holland.
And it really helped that the same guy that wrote the words was in charge of the image that was going to be produced. There were a couple of things in the script that I didn't want to do. I thought I knew everything. And the You're So Cool, Brewster, I kind of did it really subtle. I don't know, like Clint Eastwood or something, like breathy. And he said, and he like shook me and said, no, Steve, you got to just be all out obnoxious with it. And it was painful to do that. So he was there to pull that out of you.
I can't imagine it any other way. You really couldn't.
So there was actually one question.
Yeah. One of the things that struck me is that this film is also about the hero's journey. Charley's journey to becoming that hero and everything he encountered. And what's great about the horror genre is that you have a bunch of complex characters, whereas other films, it's very straight and simplistic. Sometimes I feel like at the end of it, there's transformation that occurs. Can you talk about the transformation that you felt with the character, and were there any personal transformation that occurred?
It's a good question. Yeah. Well, and it's bookended because the movie opens with Charley and Amy in his bedroom, and at the time it was kind of a little more freewheeling with sexuality. Like, she knew what was going on up there, but she didn't have a problem with it. I did. Anyway, but when you get to the bookend, right, the final scene, I did feel there's a maturity. I mean, how can you not go through what I went through, my character, and Amy had a lovely arc in the story. It's actually a very, really magnificent character, one of the best I've ever gotten to do, because it was so fully realized in a lot of ways. But we also had to live in our imaginations. That's what actors do, and especially when you get into something that doesn't have a relative human experience, you find that in yourself. But I would say maybe it was more relaxed by the end. I had because I'm getting ready, I'm ready for it now. But it's interesting because it was shot somewhat sequentially, not totally. That, we
shot the end at the end.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys shoot the beginning?
Did we? I think we did. We must have done that set all at one time.
Well, most of the exterior stuff was done early. That was we did all of that outside, backlot and all of that stuff, and that's mostly at the beginning of the movie. So many are towards except for going to visit the Dandrige house with the detective and everything.
I'm sure you guys are aware, since you're all movie fans, that movies generally are not shot chronologically in order, but they're basically dictated by somebody called the production manager or the location manager, not the location manager, but the production manager. And the scenes are basically, you bunch them together in ways that save money, because you can't go in chronological order all the time. It's just too chaotic and too expensive.
In answer to your question, I would say for my character, I thought about that. What happens at the other end of this thing? You can't be normal. You can't go back to being, I'm just Charlie Brewster, next door and all of that stuff. I mean, there must have been some real fractured stuff there, and in the sequel, they sort of touched on that a little bit, because Charlie goes to a psychiatrist and stuff and has kind of been told of all this stuff that was imagined. But I don't know. I mean, it's really interesting spot to examine that you don't see a lot, really, even in horror movies. Everybody seems to get over it, unless it's
in the making of the movie, it's so how it worked. The scene where Lennox comes to the door, all the interior stuff was shot on the Disney backlot. Everything, me walking in the door, everything, him going,
Exterior,
I'm sorry, at the Disney lot. And then the outer stuff outside the door with him was shot in Culver City lot 2 months later. So you're going back and forth. It looks instant, but it's not.
Yeah, that was the learning curve for me, because I was mostly a stage actor. Going to a door, turning the knob in December, coming through the door in February, so you really have to kind of bank that memory and idea.
Which is part of the actor's journey.
So, okay, we have time for like one or two more. I see a couple hands, so.
Obviously, at the time, you guys didn't know what Fright Night would become like decades later. So I'm curious how your lives and careers were, like right after filming and maybe the release of the film too. And at what point did you realize this became cult following for this film decades later?
Interesting question.
I, in reference to something someone else brought up, when I finished the movie, it really didn't do anything for me, because the horror genre was considered a subgenre. And so I can't tell you how many casting people I would go meet, and they would say, well, I don't see movies like that. I don't like movies like that. So it's basically they know you did a movie, but it was already categorized and filed away, and it wasn't really part of the process for going on to other genres of movies for me. And this did not exist in those days. This world, this fandom, VHS. I think that their VHS existed, but it was,
That was the beginning of it.
Yeah, the beginning of it. So when you did a movie, you hoped it did well at the box office, and then, you went on to your next thing or something like that. So but through streaming, cable, DVD, VHS. I mean, this has become its own thing, and there's no way, I don't think anybody imagined that we would be sitting up here together 38 years later talking about it. I don't think so, right?
I'm curious as to what kind of, I don't know the answer to this question with you. I'm curious as to, did you have a lot of pushback?
I had pushback initially when I decided to do it, because I'd done Tale of Two Cities for CBS, Hallmark Hall of Fame, in Europe, shooting for.
You play Jesus as well?
I played him. Yes, I played Jesus, Thomas Wolfe. I'd had an Academy Award nomination, et cetera, and so to just decide to do it in the first place was controversial. But at the same time, I had a very strong belief after reading the script that this is unusual, and then almost immediately after, not exactly immediately after, I went back to work with Tom on Child's Play. So I was I took the leap in, and I just have to share this quickly. As I was making the movie, just before I made after Child's Play. Anyway, I'm so old I can't remember what happened yesterday. I remember once I was on the subway, and the first time I actually realized, to your question, when did you understand that this had become some sort of cultural phenomenon? There were two moments, actually. Once was on the subway, where literally I'm standing there, and there's a gentleman standing across from me holding a strap, and I'm holding the thing, right? And he's going like this. Like, I know you. And then the other time I was in a house in LA, and we were renting the house, and a cable guy had come. Something was wrong with the cable, and I was there during the day for some reason. And the guy's working all day, didn't say a word to me. And then he comes up to me for me to sign the thing at the end of the cable visit. And as I'm writing my name, he goes, "I'm surprised you come out in the daytime."
I think after the movie, I didn't talk to these guys or even associate with them for like 10 years. And then I got a call from somebody, maybe even longer. I got a call, I remember, and they said, "Oh, you should come we're doing these conventions." I was like, "What?"
20 years.
Was it
John.
20? It might have been.
You're old too.
Maybe, yeah. And honestly, I was like, "What are the conventions?" And they're going, "Yeah." And once we started doing the conventions, that's when I started hanging out with everybody. I didn't see them really much before that.
This is all happening because of you guys. I mean, you're the reason it's still happening.
You brought us back together, actually. True. And believe it or not, we really do love each other.
He's not so bad when you get to know him. I was maybe a little rash. Sorry.
So we have time for one last question. I see a hand right there.
So we have the film poster with the artwork from France and from Spain. Have you seen the film in other languages? Follow-up question. Do you speak other languages besides English?
Good question. Have you seen the film dubbed, and if you speak any other
Hablo un poco de español.
No, I've never seen any foreign versions.
No.
Have you guys?
Nope.
I haven't, but I did run in at another convention. I ran into a Greek poster of Fright Night.
Oh, wow.
Which I signed for the guy. I was going to steal it, but
I wish you had.
Next time.
Where is it? Is it for sale?
It's in Canada somewhere.
I'm going to bid against you.
Someone here has a poster from Czechoslovakia.
Yeah.
And we saw a couple from Turkey as well. Yeah.
Well, since that one was such
I just want to say one more thing about Hot Springs, Arkansas, because I grew up in Arkansas. Hot Springs, Arkansas has a wax museum, if you're into this kind of thing. It used to be a Madame Tussauds, but it's not anymore. It's just the Hot Springs Wax Museum. But it's also a time capsule because they haven't added anything since 1975, probably 79. So you go in there, the first thing you go in and see is young Steve McQueen on a motorcycle, and they have young Nixon from his White House years, and it's kind of a meta version of it'd be a great setting for a horror movie, by the way, because but it's really, really interesting, and I think that was an influence on my becoming an actor, because it was like you go to the different scenarios, and it's, some of them are from movies. There's Al Capone and stuff like that. Because it was from before The Godfather was made a movie, but so I just thought that was an interesting tie-in. So support your local wax museum, folks,
and support your local movie theater.
I will tell you one real quick thing. When they were talking about the first time, you realized that maybe it was a bigger movie than I thought. I was waiting in line at the airport at the TSA, and there was probably 70 people in front of me. I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be here all. And all of a sudden, all the way at the front of the line, the TSA guy's like, "Hey, Billy Cole, come on up." Okay.
Well, I think that is a pretty great note to end it on, guys. But before we do, be sure to stop by everyone's tables, get some pictures, get some autographs. I know they have a lot more stories to tell you, and make some noise for the cast of Fright Night.
This is Ray Santiago, and you're watching Fandom Spotlight. Please watch, like, and subscribe, or else we'll find you and you'll die.